Well, Kevin Hicks, thank you for taking the time to join me on the podcast.
Appreciate you having me.
And before we go into learning about yourself, I'd like to do a little monologue just because this is the 50th episode in the Fractional series.
I'm honored.
And it's really cool that it just happened to be the 50th and you're sitting here for the 50th episode.
Very cool.
And when I started doing this podcast, I didn't really know what the purpose and what the ultimate goal was, but I just knew that it would be something that would be fun for me to use as a tool to get to know people in the community. And now it's turned into something where I can look back and think of all the people that I've spoken to and what I've learned, and then also being able to help showcase what other people are doing in the community.
Yeah.
And it's something that takes a lot of time, but it's something that's been really, really fun and educational for me. And just want to thank you and everybody else that's been on the show.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty astute group, and I'm really, really thankful to be part of it. So yeah, thanks for the invite.
Thank you. No, thanks for coming. So why don't you tell us about yourself? Who is Kevin Hicks? What do you do? How'd you get to what you're doing?
Thank you.
And, yeah.
So I'm a Fractional Chief Operating Officer, part of a group now in Wilmington called the Fractional Collective, which you're also part of.
Yep.
And which, in my role, it's helping companies that are stuck get unstuck and get stuff done. And operations is about efficiencies. And I have a part-time role, 5 or 10 hours a week with Wake Forest University's B School with the Center for Private Business. And the center is a membership model where members pay $1,500 a year to get access to facilitated learnings that we help with that bring in experts to small business owners and family businesses, focusing on 6 core areas: succession planning and strategic planning and governance, family harmony and culture, and leadership. And we also have another program that we run that's we license from YPO, which is we called Forum, which is peer engagement for 6 to 8 executives, and we have about 20 of those across the state, and helping executives go deep on issues that are problematic to them. And our model is a little different from IPO in that we self-moderate. The 6 to 8 all get trained, one person each year, and they rotate around.
Interesting.
And so that everything can stay private. And of those, there's 20 of those groups across the state. There's 230 members, so about half of them are in forums. And my role in Wilmington is just help with membership and help businesses find their rhythm.
Very cool.
Good.
And so before you got into working with smaller businesses and nonprofits and privately owned businesses, you had a career before that.
Yeah, I was a banker here, RBC Centura.
Yep.
Where the Kentucky Fried Chicken is at New Center and Market, there used to be a little box that looked like a bank, and I opened checking accounts there, and then eventually managed a couple of branches and went into private banking and was hired by a client who asked me to help him start a family office for his family, and so I was the CFO of his family office, and he also had a very small business that he wholly owned, and he's like, Kevin, I think we can grow this thing. We actually try, and it had 10 people maybe in the office there, and we got a keystone contract within 12, 14 months, and that went to 50 people, and then another couple of contracts, and within 3 years we're at 72 people, and there was just chaos. And I found myself, rolling up my sleeves and building Salesforce instances and figuring out what processes were going to be and helping with communications and just going all around and finding we had a really, really solid HR person, and she really taught me a lot. But that's when I loved operations. The chaos made sense, and getting them to that place where it was still rolling. And so fast forward, I guess there was almost 10 years, 5 years. I was COO of Johnson Nursery up the road.
Yep.
And really, really loved that. Ended up finding myself in a 1099 role with them, and still learning that I could get a whole bunch of stuff done, be on the org chart, and not be there every day. And that was sort of eye-opening. And when I started looking around, and I found an organization called V-Chief that's their model. They staff Fractional Chief Operating Officers, all virtual.
Got it.
And that was a little over 3 years ago, and they have their own biz dev team. And so I find roles, and they're always short-term roles, helping organizations, usually nonprofits, large nonprofits, national nonprofits, straighten things out. And so my engagement with V-Chief is typically something similar to this. It's either they know exactly what they want or they don't. And so I'm there on the front end trying to help them solve a problem, and then I'm there for an extended period of time to implement it.
Got it.
And as on the org chart.
Yep.
And in a nutshell, that's kind of what fractional is. It's project realization. That's one metric. And customer satisfaction. Those two metrics always stand. And then there's the metrics depending on the project that I'm working on. So a 9-month engagement is pretty typical. Word got around that I was doing that here in Wilmington, and a couple of nonprofits have engaged me to do it here. And it's a little bit longer engagement with them because really want to do things on their rhythm. Just kind of tweak the things they already do well.
Yep.
And so that's the world of V-Chief. And I look, because I was a banker and could semi-read financial statements, I really do look at everything in the operations through a financial lens. And I feel really lucky to be able to see things as an investment and really what that means, and see things from an owner's perspective.
Definitely. Well, in small business, you've got to everybody's wearing a couple different hats.
Yeah, right.
Right? And when I talk with a lot of our clients, when we're doing, fractional CFO stuff, so many times the conversation switches more towards like an operational discussion, because we're looking at financials, things aren't where we want them to be or aren't making sense. And so we start talking, and then next thing you know, it's like we're talking about what's going on in the operations of the business, because that generally has a direct impact on the financial statements.
I don't know what I would do without the financial teams finding the problems. Why isn't this working? Who's helping you with this? Because it usually starts that way.
Yeah, and likewise, we're like, who's the operations guy? Because we're typically talking with the business owner, or, for the most part, and, we're coming up with these ideas or issues that we got to solve. And it's like, okay, so who's the operations guy or gal that we can talk to and, try to sort some of this stuff out?
Owners are great at a lot of things. And I think that I would struggle in that kind of role, but seeing a vision and linking that with the long-term plan, and then just getting a whole bunch of stuff done, it's really appealing.
Yeah. So how would you explain the difference between, I think I know the answer, but the difference between a consultant and a fractional executive?
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of overlap in the way people think about it. And I think with a fractional executive, you're renting accountability. You are paying for someone to come in and to structure things because they've done it before. and they're on the org chart. They have responsibilities and accountabilities for what they're trying to achieve.
Yep.
Consultants, they, in theory, they could be there in perpetuity, and a fractional will not be, in theory. I think that also a fractional absolutely on 100% has to have the buy-in from the executive or from the board or both for it to work. And a large organization doesn't necessarily need that for a consultant. So a consultant is maybe coming in and charging by the hour. And I may be speaking out of turn for my other fractional friends, but I'm a fee basis on a project. Project realization is the metric, so it's getting that done and not on an hourly basis.
Right. And I think I've kind of defined the difference, again, speaking in generalities, and there's different models, but generally speaking, I think a consultant is someone more that comes in and provides an opinion or some guidance or advice on how things should be done. And a fractional executive comes in and might be able to do that, but is implementing, and like you said, on the org chart, has accountability and is really in there doing stuff.
Yeah, I get really deep with my clients, really deep.
Yep.
And really understanding their strategic thinking, where they're going. How do I fit in with this long-term plan that you're trying to get done? And I think that's a little bit different than a consultant's project-based.
Yeah. So how do you typically start off an engagement with a client? What's your process?
It sort of depends on what they need. What I've really enjoyed doing is that discovery phase and spending a lot of time with this. And most organizations, if they've been around for a while, are pretty good at what they're doing. There's some hiccups or maybe some things that they missed, or they've grown out of where it was working before.
Yep.
I have a very strong bias about organizations having to have a human rhythm, and which is a rhythm that human beings can thrive in and can find safety in. And not to get too deep into my thinking, but if you look back at Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, but he looked at how organizations work really well, and he called it Theory X and Theory Y and Theory Z. And Theory X was kind of that carrot approach to, maybe a stick, but carrot approach to doing things. And he changed that way of thinking to a Theory Z, which was that there needs to be psychological safety in an organization for people to thrive. There needs to be simplicity. There needs to be a chance for people to understand how to argue and to feel engaged with that. And that's really, really difficult. And so part of what I like to do is understand on the front end, where does an organization sit with this? Is this what they want, or do they not? Because I'm not always a great fit,
right? And
I've learned that too. And I'll give you a really good example of when I'm not a good fit. Engineers look at a chief operating officer way differently than other organizations do, and so being part of a programming team or a sprint and having a report to a COO is not where I really work.
Right. Do you, to that point, is there a certain level of technical ability and understanding that you are required to have to be a fractional COO?
That's a great question. I've been lucky that I've had a lot of overlap in IT with it as an administrator. I told you I was a Salesforce administrator, HubSpot, and we're certified in revenue operations, which is that kind of big picture of looking at some of these technical aspects of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I would say, I know what to ask, and I know where the professionals are, and I've seen what's not worked. A COO typically isn't the person who's there, fixing patch cords. They're trying to figure out the big picture stuff so that this can be done efficiently.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Understanding the long-term goal, getting the right people in the right seats, and removing barriers or obstacles so
right.
The team can be successful.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think about the opportunities that are missed when folks have so much on their plate, and they're kind of in that, what do I do next? And there's some beauty in simplicity and making sure everybody knows where their priorities are and how it fits in with where you're going, and making sure that that's the sort of thing that you can focus on every day. Mm-hmm. And so in my world, that's operations.
Definitely. Yeah, it's such a broad range mm-hmm. of activities. Mm-hmm. How do you manage like scope creep or
happens all the time,
or just like managing, because it just bleeds into everything.
So I'm milestone based, and project realization, these milestones all lead towards a project in right. State, successful in state, woohoo, party, we did it.
Yep.
So we run into something, not unusual is people aren't really good at, let's say, running meetings, and everyone dreads going to a meeting, or it's just something else, or I've got 3 today and 5 tomorrow, and why are you having all these meetings? And so we kind of pick at the edge of that and find it, and so we may have to say, okay, this is important. You're wasting a lot of time. So if you'd like, I can help you solve this, but maybe that's going to change what another delivery or another milestone is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And so rescope it. Everybody says kumbaya, that's great, and then we move on. But yes, it's rarely scope creep in the sense that Kevin's going to be here another year now, within the same project.
Yep. Mm-hmm. When's a good time, or when's a good example of when an organization needs a fractional COO? Or
I found there's kind of 3 telltales. One is you're losing a lot of people, maybe some good ones. Mm-hmm. Another is that you've spent a lot of time on a strategic plan, and you start to work on it, and a year later, somebody says, how are we doing? And the answer is, we're not. So you're not getting your strategic plan done. Mm-hmm. And the third is, if you're an owner or a senior exec and you are asking yourself, there's just got to be an easier way than this. Every engagement is sort of fit with one of those 3.
Yeah, you put that perfectly. I mean, it just makes so much sense. Yeah. And I think it's something that any business owner, business leader, or, is something that they can understand and empathize with.
And the most fulfilling thing I do is work with nonprofits, and to think that I'm having an impact on their delivery of services to people I'll never meet. It just really gets me jazzed.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you work with nonprofits across the country.
Yes.
And so how does, when I think of, and maybe not I, but yes, when I think of operations, for some reason, I always, manufacturing or production mm-hmm. is always the first thing that pops into my mind, just because it's tangible. We're taking something, we're working it through a process, there's output.
Sure.
But when you're a virtual, fractional COO, what does that look like? What are you working on?
It's still systems and efficiencies. Yeah. And you don't always need a process when simple handoffs can work. So finding where the kinks in the way things are working are, mm-hmm. It's very, very similar. when you're delivering on a program, there's typically a process that works for whoever your mission is trying to help, and just seeing how that works. Mm-hmm. And the improvements come from simply just writing down what you're doing is a big step.
Yeah.
And how often do we do it that way? Mm-hmm. And can we get it better? It's a little bit different way of thinking about it for folks that haven't been in operations for a while, but that it's really simple blocking and tackling and just having some perspective around it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So going back a little bit, you said before you became a COO of this company, you worked setting up a family office.
Yeah.
What is a family office?
Man, I really don't want to get into this very deeply, but so wealthy families have the ability to put under one roof services that they may need on a daily basis. And it could be as much as simple as just investment advice, or it could get way broader than that and have, in fact, travel services and people who are doing purchasing and so.
Got it. So it's like basically business functions to support a wealthy family or and foundation or something.
And there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of them that have multiple families that they work with. And
got it.
So I was. I'd never done that before, and the owner was like, "Well, we'll learn," So, but that really got backburnered, which is the reason I really want to get deep into it, because I got backburnered when we get this big contract, and it's like, okay, it's go time.
Yeah.
We're going to have a meeting in Fort Lauderdale, and there's going to be 80 people there. What do we do?
Holy smokes! Yeah. So making a transition from just jumping right into, you said you guys went from, it was like 10 employees to close to 70 or 80?
Within 3 years, within the first year, we added another 42 right away.
Holy smokes.
So like I said, that HR person, she was really phenomenal to get all those folks onboarded.
What did the leadership team at that company look like? You had HR, operations?
No, CEO, HR, there was a leader in sales, and we all wore a ton of different hats, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was Kevin, who's really just go put your finger in the dike and figure out how not to have that thing leak again.
Yep. Oh man, learning by doing. It
was great. It was the best. Yeah. I really do. I'm very thankful for that experience.
Yeah. So translating that into, what's the difference, or is there a difference between working with nonprofit organizations and privately owned for-profit organizations, would you say?
Yeah, of course there is. There's, first of all, starts with a mission, and I've heard it called, the organization's superpower, and I completely believe that, because it's really easy to get folks aligned around the mission. Mm-hmm. It's how you do it is where the hiccup may be, and that's quite a bit different in a for-profit. Of course, you could have a mission, and that may not resonate the same. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm taking a shortcut as a COO by saying that it's fulfilling to work with nonprofits, because I know that that's already in my back pocket, is helping folks get aligned around that very easily. Of course, the financials are quite a bit different, and how you're showing what you need to purchase or in the process of purchasing, and that's I put that on you, and I think that that the roles are a lot different in a nonprofit. It's an organization that is by definition there to help people, and you don't have to just be on the program team to really have that caring attitude. And when a whole organization is kind of pulling in that direction, if they're pulling in the wrong direction, it can get off track really quickly, which is not the same as a for-profit business.
Yep. And being called a nonprofit leads people to think that these organizations or these businesses operate on zero profit,
right?
Which I don't know how you can operate any organization or enterprise on a zero profit, right? Like you still, while the mission is more focused around a positive cause or helping people or helping something, it's still a business, and a business has to pay its people. It has to, manage all the functions of a value chain or supply chain, and you need resources. You need money to be able to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of times that money kind of comes with strings attached, and it's tell me what you're going to do. Okay, you did it. Now prove it that you've done it. And where's that data? And how do we know that data is accurate? And so that all comes back down to fractional, where fractionals can really jump in, right? So I think of in your world, assuming that there's the right delegation of duties, it's got to be day one sort of Q&A, and I can see HR really coming in and putting capacity in place and understanding where you're going with that, and how does your strategy match up with your people, and I see IT really being able to have a huge impact on all this data and making it easier to collect. And presenting it in ways that are more powerful. And so when you're renting accountability in fractional world, you're putting all these pieces in place to have this. When you're trying to prove back to your grant source what you did, that you promised that you were going to do. That's a way different way of thinking than in a for-profit world, right?
Yeah. You mentioned calmness in the chaos or comfort in the chaos.
Yeah, I have it for sure.
Tell me more about that. What is that?
Oh gosh, right.
What is that?
I think it might be a character flaw. I might not be realizing, that things are falling apart right around me, but I've always felt like that there was an opportunity when there's a bunch of things not quite working out to find a pathway through it. And it's just a matter of yes and as much as possible. And so I enjoy putting people in positions for them to solve problems that they had a hard time understanding previously. So context and ability. So helping them understand the difference between having someone in a role who's capable and somebody is in the role who has ability, and capability versus ability. So making sure that folks whose innate talents, their capabilities line up with what you need them to do. And I'm jumping into some HR stuff here, but really getting everyone aligned includes how everyone in the company or the organization makes decisions. Who can make this decision, who can't. That's important, and it speeds decision making, and that's efficiencies. So I think chaos a lot of times comes from really not knowing where the lines are drawn to how to solve a problem.
In communication and
heck yeah.
But I think that when things are chaotic or when things are not going according to plan, that's when companies can get, or organizations, nonprofits can get, potentially dig themselves into a deeper hole, because when you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you're not relaxed or calm, cool, and collective, it's hard to make good decisions. And if you can find somebody that could, a great operator, a great leader is someone that can, maintain coolness and think logically and
Sure.
when it's crazy.
Sure,
chaotic.
and there's a ton of tools for everybody. I have biases for the ones that I think that really work. And for instance, I think the Eisenhower matrix is a really great tool.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's ensuring that what is urgent and what is important are differentiated, and that that you are getting the things done that are priorities for you, so that the urgent things aren't getting in the way, and the important stuff is still getting done. And I think it's a very simple way of just kind of framing what's going on around you. And I've even seen on job descriptions a tool that explains, in your world this is urgent, and in your world this is important.
Interesting.
So there's so many tools, but just having making things simple for people to see where there's an exit. That this isn't as bad as it seems. We can get through this. Is the idea.
I'm really interested by this Eisenhower matrix. It sounds like it comes from Eisenhower, president.
Supposedly, I'll go with it.
And
President Eisenhower. Of course, he was also
general.
He ran the war, so he had a few things on his plate.
So he had a few things on his plate. Someone that I've worked with has used Eisenhower. When he's trying to explain to me about team building, and I've talked about this in a couple interviews with people, but he kept telling me this story over and over. And he's an older gentleman, and I was like, Bill, are you, did you forget that you told me this story last time? And I was telling somebody else this who knew Bill. He's like, Chris, it's because you're not listening to him. He knows. He knows he's told you a story. But he has a story about like the night before that they were storming the beaches in Normandy on D-Day. Like they had this plan of what was going to happen, but the weather changed, and what could go wrong will go wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And so he brings all of his his generals in who are in charge of the different departments, and basically sat down with each and every one of them and says, can you get this job done? Can you? And everybody said yes. And the story goes, I don't know how true this is, but the night before D-Day, he got a full 8 hours of sleep because he trusted in his team.
Yeah.
He had the right people in the right spots and had, like the definition of leadership. And a lot of bad stuff happened, but it was a successful, mission in the turning point in the war.
Thank goodness for people like that in our past and our history. And
absolutely.
What he knew innately, he put down, and now all of us are learning from it. And I'm the same. I don't know that I've come up with anything particularly unique. I think that I've begged and borrowed from a whole bunch of different sources. Right. But I really do believe, though, that going back to Theory Z and making sure that there is a very human way of doing things for an organization, particularly if it aligns with the ethos of the organization and the mission, that way more stuff is going to get done.
Yep. Way more
at a cadence that you didn't think you could do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I think the studies bear this out, but not every organization is the same.
Well, does that kind of go into the conversation or the idea of what company culture is?
Mm-hmm. Sure, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's the way you work. Let's see, Sally McCord, she was the first HR director for Netflix, mm-hmm. and her book just changed everything for me because she really talked about what culture is and what it's not, and what they had to build right there in the beginning, and a lot of the hiccups around putting a CD in a mailer and sending a DVD in a mailer and sending it out, and what was not working and what was expensive at the time, and finding investors, and so it's a bunch of the backstory on Netflix in its own, but really at its heart it was a story of how they built a culture that thrived on that growth chaos.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really neat book.
You have to check that out.
Please. Yeah.
People ask, I feel like company culture is a huge topic in business, and it probably always has been, but I think ever since COVID, where everybody migrated to a remote working schedule or remote workforce, and bringing people back to the office, and what's your company culture like? Do you think that that's something that's become more of a discussion let's say in the past 3 to 5 years than maybe 10 to 20 years ago? Or
Work from home, you mean?
Well, I think just like, people talking about company culture in general. Is that something that's become more talked about or important in the past 3 to 5 years, or is that something that's always been important and I just haven't really paid attention to it? Or what's your thought on that?
I don't know that I can answer that, but I will say that the organizations I've worked with, and when they talk about how they work, they're very articulate at it. They've put some thought into how this is how we work, right? I mean, a restaurant is going to have a really hard time with remote workers.
It's going to be really difficult.
So it doesn't fit for everybody.
Yeah.
So if you're a mission-driven organization and you've got people on the front lines doing things, it's really, really hard to do that from home.
Yeah.
Not for everybody, but So I think that leaders in nonprofit space, but leaders in general, it seems like can articulate what they want their culture to be way better than I would have thought. So maybe it has changed.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be an interesting question to ask like 5 or 10 different people, because you might get 5 or 10 different answers.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just something that I've been more attuned to, just because of our line of work. And
yeah, that's right. Exactly. Large nonprofits aren't tremendously different from the grassroots. They're still trying to deliver something pretty important. They're just maybe a lot more streamlined at some things than others, but because of the scale that they're at.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a common theme with nonprofits that you work with, that these are generally areas where they need support in or extra capacity, or is it really just dependent upon the different organizations or different missions? Or like when you go into these organizations, do you see similar issues or problems across all of them, or
Yes.
is it case specific?
Yeah, it's really hard. You mentioned scope creep. It's really hard in a lot of organizations to make sure that everything that they're doing lines with their mission. It could be you've got this great facility here. It could be as simple as like someone coming and saying, I want to take on your landscaping, because I think we can do something and really make it special here, and I'll take care of that. Now that person is doing something that's not aligned with your mission, but it's a great idea and probably needed to be done, and where else are we going to find the money for that? And so that seems to have happened a lot, where there's activities that are well intentioned and are really doing things, but don't line up with the mission. And when an organization talks about capacity, they think, how am I going to fit that in? Well, you could stop doing this, and that will give you capacity. Did you know you were doing that?
Right.
Meetings is another example. What are we getting done? So how much time are we spending on these?
Yeah, meetings can be a very, very productive way to get things done, but they can also be very, very unproductive if they're
If
not
you think
done.
about it, it's the most expensive thing a business does every day, is put everybody in one room and say, let's do this. And I think the biggest mistake, I'm getting sideways here, but the biggest mistake most people do is try to use meetings to build consensus. It's a big waste of time.
Tell me more about. I think I understand what you're saying, but trying to get everybody in the room
On the same page.
the same page, as opposed to leadership
solving
making?
problems. Yeah,
Okay.
Getting stuff done in the meeting that allows people to, if they come from this, they're doing this stuff. All right, now we're at this point in time. We got to keep doing stuff. So we're going to all get together and agree what needs to be done next. That consensus can be really, really a waste of time. But making sure that it's clear and that everybody knows what their roles are going to be is very good reason for having a meeting.
So tell me about, let's call it your bedside manner with a client. You go in and you see stuff and you're like, whoa, this is really not, this is really not good, or this is really off purpose, or we're wasting. How do you go about communicating that in a way that's, perceived as not insulting or something like that?
I've only had one mentor really in my professional life, and long gone, and it was early on in my banking days. We were in a meeting and I had some questions and we were going back and forth and with a couple other people, and then afterwards he goes, Kevin, I need to change your responsibility. And I'm like, you're my mentor, I don't even report to you. This is around captives, and he's like, I'd live in Barbados and Kevin lives in Wilmington, and I was like, how's that going to happen? He goes, no, I need to change your responsibility, how you respond. And from that, I learned a lot about how to challenge with curiosity, and to know where I think things should go, but really to understand and ask questions and get to the root of things with someone else's help who's really ultimately responsible for the change anyway.
Got it. So does that involve asking questions?
A ton of questions.
Yeah.
Ask a lot of questions. There's so many great coaches in this town, and so to think that I could be someone who would coach people is not, I don't have a methodology for that, but I think I could be a mentor. And so I see that as my role is putting that I'm in place to help folks make sure that they know how to make these kind of decisions going forward. So, what are we missing here? What's your line of thinking? And, where did you hear that? How do you know that's true? So challenge with curiosity, I think, is really where I want to be in every single client meeting.
Yeah. The more and more I work with my mentors and coaches, and it really, a lot of my personal development right now on leadership is me learning how to ask questions.
Yes.
To your point, what you said is that's the best way. What people say is, that's the best way to, get accountability where accountability needs to be. Because if, for example, if I tell somebody, hey, this is how you should do it, they go and do it, and it screws up, whose fault is it, right? Where's the accountability? But if I ask somebody a question that says, hey, how do you think we should do this? What do you think the solution to this problem is? And there's the answer, and asking maybe some follow-up questions to maybe kind of steer them into where you think is correct. But then it's their idea, and the accountability is with them.
I try to be an agnostic personality where, I know you're the expert. You've been doing this for a long time, and look at all the change you've made.
Yeah.
I'm just here to help you tweak what you already do well.
That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. So bedside manner, I hope that's what my clients see.
Yeah.
He told us to do this. No, I hope I'm not doing that.
Well, we're already at the end of our
fantastic
of our time.
Like that. Yeah.
I know. So tell me, kind of last question. What does the future look like for Kevin Hicks? Where do you see yourself spending your time and focus, in the next 5, 10, 15 Here's.
Yeah, you putting your coach's hat on because that's the coach question, right?
I'm not trying to. I'm genuinely curious, and I
like,
think it would be cool for people to understand
or
know. But
let's say Kevin and Louise, my wife, win the lottery, right? I still see myself doing this.
yeah,
Okay, that's
awesome.
This is good stuff.
That's really cool.
I feel very strongly that I'm just a facilitator of information, and once everybody has it, they're going to do it way better than I probably could, and especially for their organization, I definitely hope that that I get to continue doing this for a long time, awesome. Right? So, short term is my referrals have always come from, and VChief have always come from the biz dev team, right? Mm-hmm. So I've not had to go out and get any business, mm-hmm. And here in Wilmington, it's been like, oh, I heard you do this, so it's been by word of mouth, and I told Louise, I'm not really sure I have a business if I can't go and get a new client on my own. And so I think in the short term, the idea is that I could get a new client all by myself.
Yeah.
And, that would be a huge win for Kevin.
Well, I think I know of a couple that would maybe check that box. And I mean, referrals, that's getting your own client.
Well, okay,
I think,
well enough. All right.
I think doing good work for clients and people around the community recognizing that and then referring, that's marketing. That's the best form of marketing in my book.
No, I'll take it then.
It's the least expensive too.
Fair enough. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
appreciate your time.
Kevin. Yeah, really appreciate it, man.
Me too.